G'day everyone, welcome to the Raw Rugby Podcast. I'm Christy, Doran, and as always on a Monday, in your ears on a Tuesday, former Wallaby Matt Toomua joins, and there's a lot to chew through. Another defeat for the Wallabies, but the Rugby Championship continues. In Australia, we'll head to Argentina. Some injury concerns, a few players certainly going to be fit to take on Los Pumas. What a bounce back for the All Blacks against Argentina. Eden Park, 50 straight wins there, and that 30-year stranglehold, the fortress, continues. And we're also going to be joined by Scott Bowen, the Australian Sevens high performance manager, and a man who's clearly played for the Wallabies in the past, but his kid, Jack Bowen, could be on his way there in the future. We're talking a bit about the Shoot Shield and where Australian rugby is at. So a lot coming up on the Raw Rugby Podcast. G'day, Matt. It's always so good to have you on a Monday. See your pretty face. Talk a bit of rugby.
It is. It's nice to see you as well. It is a bright side to my week considering the results on the weekend. But no, it's always good to chat, Code. You can't take things too seriously, can you?
No, I wouldn't think so. But we will try to a little bit when we're analysing today and what's going on. But what's this been doing over the last week and the weekend? Where do you watch the Wallabies?
I'm not a big fan of watching the Wallabies out or any rugby out, to be honest with you. I actually had someone ask me, like, oh, we're watching the game. I just ignored because I can't stand watching it in public. I'm very much, or even just with friends, I prefer to just watch it by myself and I'm very quiet during it. I feel sorry for my in-laws. They often want to talk during the game and I'm just silent in the corner trying to analyze it and get my frustrations out or whatever. So, yeah, nothing too exciting. I don't know about you, if you enjoy the company a bit more than I do.
Well, generally speaking, I'm at the press box, but this weekend decided to do it from home. But I agree, you can't have distractions. And if anyone starts talking to you, it just drives you crazy. And you end up, you put in the naughty corner immediately because emotions are going one way, and then you're talking for the first half an hour, and then all of a sudden you've got to start to prepare what you're going to write. But yeah, I agree. And it was frustrating, the performance on the weekend, but not necessarily surprising though, was it?
No. Look, frustrating because there were missed chances. I think the bit that was maybe a little bit of a reality check was the fact that was the South African team wasn't as strong as say the week before. Looking at the team list, it was quite clear that if the game was in the balance around 40, 50 minutes, that the bomb squad would probably take care of that. And it kind of went to script a little bit. The wet conditions probably a little bit frustrating. I think we clearly, in my mind, I thought we went with a game plan that was more geared towards drier conditions. Things like those crossfield kicks from our own 22, it's probably a decision there that we hadn't really adjusted the game plan based on the conditions. So, yeah, a little bit of growth to happen. But look, before these first two games, it was very much like, where are we at? Where do we stand? I think we've got an idea and it's not awful and it's not amazing. So, we keep going.
So, yeah, you're right. It was 11-9 at halftime, and it very much could have been 12-11 to the Wallabies. A missed penalty shot from Noel Wasiliev. He managed to get two really difficult kicks, and then, unfortunately, with that fourth one on the stroke of halftime, couldn't land that. And Joe Schmidt did talk about the fact that it was probably a bit of a dent for their confidence. It would have been able to give them a buzz to know that they were up at halftime. But you're right. It was probably that second half immediately. Alan Alatoa and Angus Bell don't reappear, and it just started to unravel from there. And unfortunately, Hunter Paisami, another guy that came out injured early in the second half. We revealed today on the Raw that he's got an MCL injury. He'll be missing at least the next 6 weeks. So that pretty much means that the end of his rugby championship campaign is over. So frustrating from that perspective. We'll get into some of the squad stuff later on, but in the end, a 30-12 win to the Boks, 4 tries to nothing. And I think if you think about the two matches on the whole, only one try, and that's probably a reflection about where the Boks are right at the top of their game, that they can still make 10 changes to their starting 15 and come away with such a dominant victory. But it also does say a bit about where this Wallaby side is. Yes, missing a lot of players, but they've not picked a lot of from overseas as well. And maybe that's been played out it certainly has been played out on the scoreboard.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I think one try is concerning. That being said, the Springboks are the best defensive team. They just put you under so much pressure. You might make line breaks, but their ability to hustle and is just incredible. Any loose ball, whether it be attack or defense, they're onto it. And yeah, I've said it before that I really do think they're at the peak of their powers at the moment, and they're an extremely tough team to break down. Look, there is optimism though. I thought obviously the set piece, in particular the scrum, was a lot better. Angus Bell was a huge inclusion and a really needed one, I think, considering we starting to get a little bit thin there with a few injuries in the front row.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It did, I agree. Bell was outstanding. Tisano was tough and he does what he does, but 16 tackles, not making a miss there. But we've also probably got to remember that the Boks bombed 2 to 3 tries, didn't they? And 2 tries in 2 minutes, and some great covering defence from Tom Wright, which hasn't been necessarily a strong feature of his game in the past, but that was a real moment where he stood up.
Yeah, he did. Great. And look, I thought he had a pretty decent last 2 games. It's once again the hardest games to play in terms of opposition, but I thought he stood up really well. Showed a bit of leadership there, and that'll be needed now that Hunter's missing. A lot of the calling will start going on to Lenny Ikitau and Tom Wright, so that'll be important. But one of those missed opportunities comes from a crossfield kick in our 22. Probably a bad option, but even worse, even more so poorly executed. So I do worry about the tactics there. Were the coaches endorsing that maybe pre-game when it wasn't wet? But yeah, that for me were there just a few things, a few little growing pains that hopefully we'll learn from over in the next few weeks.
Yeah, Schmidt did speak about the fact that they wanted to move the Boks around, that they didn't think they would be able to run through them, so that they tried to be creative, proactive with their kicking game. And to be fair, that's something that the All Blacks do so well, isn't it? Like when the All Blacks generally kick the most, they win, and their short kicking game's generally a feature. I remember during 2020 against you were missing this game, but Noah Lolasio's debut in Sydney at the Olympic Stadium, their kicking game was unbelievable that evening. And similarly, it was so good against England at Twickenham in 2022. And even on the weekend, the first try against Argentina comes from a Bowden Barrett chip kick. I suppose the big thing that you're talking about there is where you're doing it, and doing it inside your 22 for a crossfield, probably not the best option.
Yeah, honestly, what I'm probably more talking about is execution. And I have seen Kiwi coaches come over to Australia and expect guys to be able to, either kick off both feet or pass a bit better. And, midfielders have the ability to kick. And I think we have to adjust our, particularly short term, we have to adjust our tactics to suit who's there. And yet Hunter has shown some really good signs of growth in his kicking game. But as you say, it's usually been in the opposition 22, and maybe realizing that it's not his, best skill. So let's maybe not try and pull it out from our 22 in that case. But I think execution's a big one because ultimately there is space there. We are seeing space. That being said, it was covered quite well, but you can only expose that space if you have the ability to execute, and we're not there yet. So might have to change things just a little bit. I know I have thought about this a little bit, like what comes first, a little bit chicken or egg. Do you allow guys to grow their skills there, or do you change the tactics and then you're actually limiting their growth? I don't know, but the joys of coaching, I guess.
I thought Noah Lolacio on the whole had a reasonably positive game. It was frustrating that he couldn't make that kick on halftime, and that's a big one. Generally speaking, though, he would make that. And He finishes with 4 from 5 from the kicking tee. There was a nice chip and chase. He managed to back his pace and his stepping ability to get past Mapimpi, and clearly he wins the Wallabies under a bit of pressure, wins the Wallabies a penalty there when he's held back by his opposite number. So, I think if you're looking for some positives, that was a step forward from Brisbane.
Yeah, definitely. And look, he will grow massively from that kick, I think, because all that says to you is that it was a mental thing, because he's hitting these massive kicks from 40, on the angle, 15 in, big old kicks and tough kicks. And,
in the wet as well.
Exactly. Footing is hard to get. So that for me is really exciting. The fact that we have a guy who can do that, and under pressure, it's just growing those ones that are within the 15s, 20 out. They're very difficult kicks. It's quite easy to block it right if you're not fully committing to your kick. And so I think he'll really grow from that. And it's maybe it's frustrating in the sense that we didn't take the lead, but maybe in games to come, when he kicks a goal to win it, this will play a big part in that, in his growth.
Yeah, certainly. What did you think about the changes now? We saw Lenny Katau jump into 12 when Hunter Paisami left. I can't imagine that Len's going to feature at 12 on this trip to Argentina. I know the squad's likely to be named either Tuesday or Wednesday. There'll be a couple of changes. Clearly, the front rowers will be back. The Nick Frosts and the Jeremy Williams will be back as well. What would you do around that 10-12? Because Tom Liner's still not completely confident in his hamstring at the moment. There's some strong talk that he might not be on that trip to Argentina. So do you look at a third 10? Does Hamish Stewart potentially come in as a third 10 option? He's already part of the squad. He's played 10-12, obviously, in the past. He's an option, but David Fella-UI is potentially back in the frame. We know that Lalakai Foketi got sent off for Manly in the last minute. Does the Sydney Rugby Union judiciary do him a favour? So there's a lot of moving parts, but who do you think is the most logical person to kind of start at 12 against Argentina?
I'd probably say Lalakai. That I wasn't aware of the red card. That complicates things a little bit. So hopefully, hopefully there's a bit of backroom politics going on, a few handshakes going on. He's proven at this level. I like the look of Hamish Stewart as well. I just, I don't think I think you get more out of a midfield presence with Lalakai. Like I said, he's proven at this level. For me, he's a little bit more of a like for like with Hunter. I think he'd complement Noah quite well.
I've got to say, I was surprised that Lalakai wasn't with the Wallabies first start. I don't think he's a world beater, and I don't think at Super Rugby level he's necessarily played so much higher or a better standard than a lot. But every time he's put the gold jersey on, he's actually looked pretty comfortable out there. And I think even the start to France played really well against France in 2022, part of the World Cup squad last year. But he's only got a handful of caps, but I do think that he's got the temperament, probably the experience, the life experience as well, to make a contribution.
Yeah, it's a real good point. It's the first thing I would have mentioned about Lalakai is he's a grown man. Even when I was in camp, so long ago, he's a grown man, and this team needs that. I think having that experience outside of Noah will really help him. I get excited by having him in the squad. I think some of your midfielders do need to be those kind of glue players. You can't have too many of them. You need to have a little bit of X factor. But you look at the Kiwis, guys who have forged good careers there, and your David Havili, your Anton Leonard-Browns, like not necessarily one-on-one, set the world alight, amazing, incredible Damien McKenzie type players. But, geez, they're important to a squad. And I think Lalakai can be that kind of guy. I think Hunter has the edge over him because he's got a little bit more physicality at this level. But I'd like to see him back in the squad.
Yeah. And look, if they do decide to go left of field and bring in another specialist 10 as well, I wonder if Tane Edmonds starts to get a look in. He's at North Harbour at the moment with the in the NPC. I think there's been some conversations that have taken place around, you're not too far away, but that 10 jersey is still, whilst Noah's probably got it at the moment, there's a lot of doubt around who are in fact the two top 10s in the country. So you do need to start to settle on this as we move closer to the Lions in less than 12 months' time. And it's really catching up. I think it's only there's now 4 tests left of the Rugby Championship, another 4 on the Spring Tour, and then all of a sudden your next test is against the Lions next year. So it's crazy how quickly things are coming around. Charlie Cale's another. I think he will have surgery at some point on his shoulder, so I can't expect him to be in that the TRC squad going forward. We might see Rob Leota, the Red Stewart, Fraser McWright. He'd probably be okay for the second test, but whether or not you could take someone at this point in time remains to be seen. Liam Wright, probably about a similar time frame. So, yeah, a lot to look forward to from a squad perspective. Awesome to see Max Jorgensen make his debut. I think he was a bit of a someone who looks like in the years to come he'll really belong on the international circuit, but someone who already does at the moment is Marika Koroibete, and he wasn't flawless. He gave away a couple of penalties, but Matt, can you talk about what you saw in terms of someone looking like they actually do belong on the international stage right now? Because it seems like we've gone away from picking guys who are ready for test footy right now, and we did that last year certainly. But Marika, he's proven on that international stage.
Yeah, and Marika's proof of a lot of guys at the right time in their career can play in, say, Japan, a less physical competition, and then come over and straight away. And you see it with pretty much half the South African team. They enjoy their time in Japan, and then they can just turn it on when it comes. And oh, look, he hasn't missed a beat. He gives away a penalty or two, but sure, you will take that because he is going full throttle. He is, I would put Marika in the top 3 players that I've played with in my career. He is just such an amazing rugby player, such a competitor. He's so tough, and yeah, we need more of these kind of guys in our squad. I'd like to see, I've said it, many, many times, I'd like to see more Will Skeltons and Arnolds in our squad, guys who are, proven, battle-hardened men ready for this. So, look, it's tough for some guys because ultimately, if you're a young fella, you get picked, you're not going to say no. You're gonna jump in there. But I thought it was really exciting seeing Jorgensen on the weekend. He's a guy who I was actually saying to my wife, we watched him play for Joey's only a couple of years ago, and here he is on the big stage. It's really cool to see, and I think we'll be speaking a lot about him in the future.
What was the context in being at the Joey's game?
I think it was at Joey's Riverview at Leichhardt. When the guy when the stands the crowd fell over the front of the stands. I actually just ended up going just mad footy nerd that I am. I went and watched, and it's kind of cool seeing guys like that make the next step.
It was a heck of an atmosphere there. So, yeah, you're right. I thought a couple of really promising touches, and had he scored that try or chipped ahead and managed to regather, it would have done a lot for his confidence. But you can already see that the way that he moves is pretty special. And 19, his old man Peter debuted at 19. He's the 31st player to do it under the age of 20. But he and his father, the first to do that as a father-son combination, to be able to debut before they're 20, it's just pretty remarkable.
Yeah, imagine the pressure on his son. He would be an underachiever if he gets a Wallaby at 20. You'd be like, oh, mate, it's pathetic. I was actually thinking that recently with the Olympics when Naomi Fox gets a gold medal, and she's the underachiever in the family with only 1 gold medal. So it's there's some pretty talented families out there. No, look, I honestly see a guy like Jorgensen, and I get little glimpses of like a Kurtley Beale, young star, just moves differently to other guys on the field. Jorgensen, obviously different position, probably has a little bit, he seems like more of a maybe a calmer guy than him. Kurtley obviously very at that age was just set the world on fire. But there's a reason why he was touted and scouted from a lot of codes. So it's good that he's in our one.
What I like about Max, and we'll wrap it up here, put a bow on that, but is that he's composed. He doesn't actually seem to buy into the hype that some players might. And I'm not saying that Quade and Kirtley did this, but they're flashy 10s, aren't they? They ran the show, big communicators. Max is very different. He's calm, composed, was, spending time on the wing at the moment, but can play fullback. But he just goes about his business. And I know that he's got a cheeky sense of humour, but at the moment, they're very different, Max, to the James O'Connors of the world that burst in the scene, 15 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. It is a personality thing, but I think, it's a really good point you make in terms of big communicators. When you're at 10, you kind of have to show a little bit of your personality and live on that fine edge a little bit. So being at 15 a little bit more, you can kind of just get about your work, and hopefully that sets them up for a bit for some success in the future, because there's a lot of excitement there for sure.
Before we talk to Scott Bowen, so a little bit of commentary across the ditch in the breakdown program where Nils Muliaina and Jeff Wilson and Sir John Kerwin talking about the Wallabies, and they're probably concerned, given that the Anzac, the Trans-Tasman competition that they're involved in, and they're watching this from afar and thinking, blimey, they're not going that great at the moment, Australia. Mills even saying that he can't see much positivity. Dire straits is what he used and termed. Is that too strong a reaction? Is it too strong a commentary? Is it in this day and age where anything's considered clickbait, which is evocative, is it too sensationalist, or is it actually, Rugby Australia and Australian rugby, they're probably giving, or are they giving some hard truths?
Oh, look, we're not in our strongest position. Dire straits is a bit of a stretch. You probably only have to look at, I've been campaigning for New Zealand to go to 4 teams, and now that we have, maybe they will as well, considering the Crusaders here. But no, in all seriousness, there probably is a few hard truths. Yeah, a little bit. So what? Who cares? I think it's easy to kind of kick guys when you're down a little bit, or we're struggling a little bit. I think if you're in the environment, you're in the system, you realize there are some fixes that we can make. There's some quick fixes. There is obviously some long-term things that need to happen. But yeah, our game is struggling. Let's be honest, our game is struggling. But I think in terms of results and keeping our players in Australia or playing for Australia, there's some things there that it's by no means a dead horse that we're flogging. There's some life left in it, and it's just trying to squeeze as much juice as we can out of that.
Yeah, well, I agree. I think this Argentina 2-test tour is going to be a really interesting one around where Australia is compared to perhaps not the top 3, but where are they positioned 9 months, 10 months on from that World Cup. A lot to look forward to over the coming weeks. Let's welcome in a man that's played for the Wallabies, who's worn the number 10 jersey, Scott Bowen. Hey, it's a really warm welcome to the head of high performance from a rugby sevens perspective, but a former Wallaby, a man that actually knows Matt Toomua very well. We might get to that later on. But Mr. Scott Bowen, Scott, thanks for joining the Raw Rugby podcast.
Hey, Christy.
Good to have you on, Scotty. I know you've been in meetings and appointments. That's what happens when you've been gallivanting across the world and in Europe for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, sorting out kids' iPhones that weren't being charged, also taking them to the doctors. So, certainly pulling my weight now that I'm back from Paris.
How was Paris, mate? Obviously, we would have liked to come back with a couple medals, but that being said, there were some pretty good performances from the guys and the girls.
Yeah, it was an awesome event. I think it really showcased what sevens, can be, and, being able to play in front of 70,000, crowds. It was, sold out stadiums. The actual event was awesome, but as you say, like really disappointing and, quite hollowing around, not coming away with a medal, particularly in the women's game, since Tokyo. I think we've had something like 23 tournaments, of which we've been on the podium in 21 of them. So to not podium was, quite heartbreaking. And, but it sort of, at 12-0 up against Canada in a semi-final, had all the momentum. It just sort of showed how, volatile the game is, and that when you've got momentum, you've got to capitalise. And we unfortunately didn't, and allowed Canada back in, and they were ultimately too good. And the boys who fought, pretty hard, tough pull with Argentina, got through a good quarter final, outplayed by New Zealand, but had again, didn't get much of the rub of the green in the bronze medal match against South Africa. So, as I said, we had 4 chances to get a medal, and we missed all 4. So, some really disappointing end results.
Scott, from a high performance perspective, from a review perspective, what's some of the next steps that Rugby Australia will do in terms of analysing and reviewing that, and even the futures of Tim Walsh and John Manenti? What's in store for the Sevens over the next month or so?
I think it's pretty positive, because again, I talk about that 3-year journey and how successful we've been in both programs. The men's, from when Johnny took over and back at 21, a World Series champions. We automatically qualified for the first time. We actually won some tournaments. We consistently made semi-finals. So we've performed really well over that 3 years, and a medal would have really just sort of topped it off with a little bit of icing on top. And similarly for the females, as I said before, around our results have been outstanding. We've won the World Series this year in Madrid. Won tournaments again throughout across the year, but again for 4.5 games, or just the game swung right just before half time against Canada. So not actually a lot wrong with either program. The girls, again, we had an average age of 23.5, which was the youngest team at the Olympics. And you think around the Faith Nathans, Maddie Levi, Soraya Paki, like Tia Hines, Tegan Levi, they're all still 22, 21, 23. So a lot of their best years are still well ahead of them. So, as we start to, and we start looking towards 28 now in LA, and then even beyond that to Brisbane in 32, it's looking, I guess, at our succession, planning lists. The men will have some turnover of players as well, and we'll look to, introduce some talented players into this cycle, like we did, back in 2021 when, say, Derby Lancaster first came in onto the World Series. Corey Toole, Ben Dowling, Dietrich Roach, these guys that have done really well over this 3-year cycle. There'll be, I guess, new men's players that will be introduced into the program, and hopefully will set us up for some more success.
You mentioned some guys who have transitioned to 15s quite well. I'm actually quite interested to know with the women's game, Scotty, in terms of attracting talent, how much of a carrot is that Olympics year? Like, considering we've got AFLW and NRLW and all that, trying to pull away our best athletes. How much of a carrot do you think that is? And are we doing a good enough job there? Because, as you say, it looks like it's quite positive going forward.
Yeah, look, it's Maddie, it's at the very elite end. We're actually, we're actually okay. Like, I feel reasonably confident around what we're doing there. The girls play on an annual World Series, travel the world. Then we have some additional pinnacle events, be it the Olympic Games. Hopefully, the Commonwealth Games is going to be, back on the table in 2026. So from the actual elite end, that top 18 to 20 contracted girls, we're actually reasonably well placed to retain those girls. They're obviously all full-time, centralised, contracts. It's actually our next level below that where we're really going to get challenged, which is, our player 21 to 40, who we see as, a potential around 28 and 32. They're the girls that we, are potentially struggling to keep or retain. One, because we don't have enough content for them to actually play. And then secondly, again, around some of the NRLW being, reasonably proactive, especially because they've got, additional numbers and team coming into their competition, they need talent, and they know that the Sevens athletes are the best of the best. It's no surprises, even as we watch NRLW at the moment, a lot of the best performing players in that competition are ex-rugby sevens girls who have been, again, some of them, Emma Tonagato and Vani Politi, they were outstanding sevens players internationally, amongst some of the world's best. And there's been some other players that were really good and made it to made it to international level and played for Australia. Again, a lot of it probably from decisions we made to either move them or not recontract them, as we felt there were better talented players coming through. But they're showing their skill set within the NRLW. So that's probably our greatest challenge. We probably need to, again, we've got some big 15s events on the radar, from a women's perspective coming up in the World Cup next year. We host a World Cup in 2029. And that's probably where ultimately we'd like to see, again, these girls that are looking for more content or looking for more game time, is that if we can sort of work closely with the 15s program, which is what we're doing. Hamie Fernandez has come on in that HP role for the women's program, and Joe Yap. So we have discussions constantly with them around, girls that might be suitable for 15s. And as I said, that might be a way that we can give them additional content and keep them ultimately in the game. At the end of the day, we're an international game. We need to give these girls international experiences, which is it's what sets us apart from rugby league and AFL.
Yeah, definitely. I think the one thing that I've noticed, and it's quite exciting to see, is the transfer of sevens to 15s and people doing it really well. And I think you probably saw it particularly with the restarts maybe 5-10 years ago, but nowadays you're getting guys doing single lifts. You got your Quagga Smith who comes on and is kind of an everywhere man. You got your breakdown skills, particularly out wide. You've seen that transfer, and I think that's been really interesting in the way that I believe sevens has actually evolved the 15 side of things, and I think it probably makes it easier for a lot of these girls and women to jump over and perform and succeed.
Look, the sevens is, it's just the microscopes on you. Every element of your game is heavily scrutinized. You don't make a pass, you don't make a tackle, as you say, you're late for a breakdown or you're slightly too high, well, you get exposed. So it's still a great foundation. And I think, we're going to see it in Derby Lancaster and some of these guys. We've seen it in Corey Toole, guys that have come in and been technically, worked really hard from a physical point of view around what sevens is, back-to-back days, getting up and playing when you're sore. So building the resilience and the mental side of it, but then also being exposed for all those one-on-one contests, which have to hold you in good stead when you go into in an environment where you've got more players on the field that can cover more space and be able to help you. And, whether it's Quagga Smith, you saw DuPont's impact in at the Olympic Games. He almost single-handedly turned the final in France's way, through sort of a half of football, with all just having key moments, but him delivering his, core skills at such a high level, which, again, enabled them to get a result. So it's, look, sevens is a great platform for, bringing talent through. There'll always be some people that are, specialist sevens and more suited to it. But I think, again, as our discussions with, both Peter Horn and Joe Schmidt internally from the men's side of things is also looking at how we can, retain some of our best young talent from 18 and 19-year-old, and have lost a Super Rugby team. There's an opportunity to potentially expose some of these athletes, again, to the international travel and lifestyle and offerings that rugby has through the sevens environment, even though we know they're going to be, long-term potential, very good Super Rugby players, and ultimately go on and play, for the Wallabies and play World Cups. No different to, your 2013 Bernard Foley, Nick Phipps. Those guys spent, a couple of seasons in sevens sort of carving their way, and then transitioned into the Wallabies program.
Yeah, well, the fact that they're playing in front of 70,000 at the Stade de France, you compare that to, I'm just going to say it on Mark Nwanganito Aussie on the weekend, playing in probably a few hundred in rugby league as he makes his transition. But even from the NRL to Super Rugby, and
wasn't it great to see, Christy? I was going to say, wasn't it great to see Mark kept up the common factor of a winger in rugby league, that he jammed straight away on his, I don't know if you've seen the Bulldogs' second try, but classic rugby league, winger jams in on the last person, they tip it onto the outside and score in the corner. So it's good that Mark's already learning the game quickly. He did finish off a pretty good try, but it was great to see him just jamming for no reason.
It's funny you say that, because I noticed on the other side of the coin, Carter Gordon exposing a winger jamming out of nowhere and just throwing the Hail Mary over the top. And I was like, geez, he's going to get used to that, old Carter, with his skill set.
He'll have a field day doing that, won't he?
Hey, Scotty, on the weekend you were down at, I think, Ringa Oval, so and for the Shoot Shield. Yeah, sorry, Wallara Oval. My bad.
Can you cut that and go back, mate? That's disgusting.
I certainly will, particularly given I live in Wallara. I don't know what's going on there, but I'm thinking of Rat Park and Saturday's game. But you're down at Wallara Oval and you're watching your son and Teddy Wilson and the others put on a field day against Manly. But Darby Lancaster was there as well. Great to see him, a bloke playing for the Wallabies in July, then transition play Shoot Shield rugby as well.
Yeah, it was awesome to see Darby back playing club rugby, and he has been the last 3 or 4 weeks since that Georgian test. So again, importantly for these guys, they get game time. If they're not getting selected to play in those rep teams, and they need to get back and cut their teeth. And Darby hasn't played a lot of 15s. He obviously had a breakthrough year with the Rebels this year and played 5 or 6 games before getting selected. But if you look at his trajectory since year 11 when he was injured, and then year 12 was a COVID year, so he played minimal games. He was injured his first year out of school. The second year he was with the Sevens program, and this is really his first real opportunity. So now he's been a real good addition to the East team from an outside back, quality finisher, but strong carry, and he's done really well.
I just want to ask around, where do you see the Australian rugby ecosystem at the moment? Because clearly from a top end, from a Wallabies perspective, the side is young, probably struggling. I know across the ditch, Mills Maliana just said that Australian rugby's in dire straits at the moment on the breakdown program. Where do you see it? Because you see it from every level, and you're always at the Shoot Shield, and you're looking at the schoolboys and young players coming through the ranks.
And I think at the moment with our current group, it's just time, and that's not an easy answer to accept. But the reality is we're playing, a very, very good team in South Africa, a very experienced team with some really good depth, and that's a difficult prospect when you're trying to make your way with people making debuts or getting returning from long-term injuries like Angus Bell did. So that's really hard. I think the Super Rugby season next year, and already how we've seen the distribution of some of the Melbourne Rebels into primarily into the Reds and in the Waratahs is really going to strengthen those two programs. The Brumbies have always been a strong performer. So I think from and the Force again continue to recruit good experienced players coming back potentially from overseas. So I think like next year with our Super Rugby, we're going to be in really competitive across putting 4 good teams out. And I just think with the Wallabies at the moment, well, Georgia, I think the last 2 weeks has just sort of just showed the gap at the moment that there is between obviously ourselves and the current world champs. Argentina away are going to be again a different prospect and a different challenge, and I guess we'll probably get a better gauge of really where we have progressed since those Welsh and Georgian tests when we get to take on Argentina.
Yeah, it's a really good point about where they are, and they're an inconsistent side. So you hope that the Wallabies can come away with at least one win. Hey, before we let you go, you and Matt Toomua have got a bit of history together. In case you haven't been listening in previous weeks, Matt has been coached by every single person that's come on this program. But what's your memories, and when was it when you might have coached him?
My memories is so 2008. Matty was in the Brumbies, and he came to East where I was coaching. His first involvement was against Randwick. We were running, and I can clearly still remember this. We were running to the northern end of the ground from a line out. He stepped off his right and just went straight through and scored the opening try. I can't remember the outcome or the result, but
it didn't get much better than that.
It was a nice first touch, and but we didn't see much of him that year because he obviously moved pretty quickly into being, a regular for the Brums.
It was good times, though. I was actually talking to Christy before this. I think I got close to around 40 caps over the, albeit over 4 years or something. But we had a good little squad. I think back then, remember, was that the year we had like Clyde Rathbone and all that? and would play Sydney Uni in the semi-final. There was Super Rugby players on the bench. It was wild.
Yeah, we had they had the Fianga brothers, obviously yourself, Clyde. Luke Burgess. So we had a good team. We just came up short, as you say. University in those days were pretty strong with Daniel Halengahu, dare I say it, Tom Carter, and a few others up front that they seem to always roll out around finals time.
Well, the Shoot Shield semi-finals are this weekend, and if both Randwick and East win, probably the favourites heading into these two fixtures. It could be a mouth-watering prospect in the final. More than half a century since East won the Shoot Shield title, which is just incredible to think. Scotty, are we going to see those two Eastern sides meet in the big dance?
Well, I hope so. Obviously being, I played at East and coached at East, and Jack's obviously running around there. So, that'd be the nice fairy tale. But I think, Warringah, we don't have a great record against them. In the last couple of years, I think it's the last 5 years or so at least, Warringah have won. They beat East earlier this year, and they've probably, potentially one of the most influential club players in Ben Maher. Who's spent some time in our Sevens program and is just such an infectious character and a very good footballer, that he'll be a real challenge for East to sort of keep under control. And they've got some other outstanding players. Kobe Milne's been good, so it'll be a tough game, but I think that would be the fairy tale, playing their arch rivals, Randwick in a grand final, but a long way to go before we get to that.
Well, having been at the Ken Catchwell Medal last week, I know that the Randwick contingent would definitely welcome that one. Andrew Deegan saying, it wouldn't be too bad if they come up. And I think they've actually had a pretty good record against East as well over recent years. So anyway, lots to chew over, and Matt and I will continue that on the other side of this. But Scott, so good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on the show.
No problem. Thanks for having us. Good to chat, Matty.
Thanks, Scotty. Good chat, mate.
Awesome to have Scotty Bowen, and I see him just around the traps, and he's always watching rugby. He's always involved in the Sevens, former Wallaby, and he's just a lovely man. But one of the things that I remember last year out of the World Cup, and such a disappointing day that day in Lyon, but I remember there would have been 1,000 people at a few different pubs right in the heart of Lyon, and there's a young kid, probably 20, 25, and he's wearing a Wallabies old school jersey with Bowen on the back of it. And I thought, wow, that's got to be one of a kind. That's got to be Scotty's old jersey.
That's unreal. Yeah, I genuinely, I loved being coached by Scotty. It was only a year or so at East, but God, he just made things so simple. And I'm so glad that he's still in the ecosystem, the rugby ecosystem. But I always thought he might go a bit more on the coaching side, but managing and high performance seems to be his kind of his jam, which is good. But I'm so glad he's around because he's a good man and a very smart rugby brain.
We can see it with his kid, with Jack, can't you? He just does some of the simple things really nicely and doesn't look too flustered. And and that first starting debut against the Reds back in, what was it, late May, he just looked really comfortable there as well. So, good signs for him and those, watching the Shoot Shield, Hospital Cup in Queensland, down the John Dean Cup, it's finals action. I know the Brothers had a good win with James O'Connor there on the weekend. So it gets to that time of year where it is exciting, and it's probably where the beating heart of rugby is at the moment still in Australia. You go to all the grounds, and it's on the weekend on Sunday at Rat Park in Warringah, and it was pretty busy despite the fact that there was so much rain about on the Sunday too. So, a lot to look forward to. Anything else catch your eye from the weekend? What else are you looking forward to going forward in rugby this week?
This week, obviously club rugby down here in Canberra, the John I. Dent. So I think they had the one of the knockouts on the weekend, and then from memory, Royals might go straight through. But anyway, another knockout final before the big dance in a week or two. So there's a lot going on. It is exciting. Knockouts is very much the time that you kind of rub your hands together and lick your lips a bit.
Well, make sure you get out there because there's no international action this weekend, but a lot doing across the country with the local domestic and first grade comps particularly. So awesome to have Scotty Bowen on and chatting a bit about that, and look forward to joining you in about a week's time, and we'll be definitely previewing a Wallabies Argentina test because the Rugby Championship, it's a week off this one, but less than a fortnight before the Wallabies are in Argentina and the All Blacks go across the Indian Ocean to take on the Springboks in South Africa. So until then, thanks very much for your company on the Raw Rugby podcast.
Can't wait.